Whenever someone asks me if I can eat one thing for the rest of my life, the answer is always Biang Biang noodles. But there's no protein. You'll die in a few months if you eat this every day. Well, actually, there is 2 grams of protein per quarter cup. Yeah, I'll probably die, but at least it'll be a good few months. If you're a fan of noodles, then you've probably heard of this dish, hand-pulled noodles with chili oil, or simply Biang Biang noodles. The Chinese name is derived from the sound of the dough slapping against the board as you stretch it. And this method gives the noodles incredible bite and texture. And when combined with an oil-based sauce that's perfect for thick and wide noodles like these, you get a foodgasm with every single bite. Now, I know noodle making is a little intimidating for some of you, but unlike pasta making, you really don't need any special equipment, so follow along and I promise you it's a lot more simple than it looks, and the work is well worth it. All right, and to get started, I've got over here some all-purpose flour, and the brand that I like is called Gampyo wheat flour. Just based on personal experience, that this gives the best flavored, best textured noodles. It gives some extra bite, but if you can't find these at your local Asian grocery store, just settle with some regular all-purpose flour. It works just the same. So we'll do about 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I made a mess. Sorry about that. So we've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and right here we've got some lukewarm water with some fully dissolved table salt. And I believe I put in about a tablespoon of table salt and just fully dissolve it in some water. And we're just slowly going to pour this in and start forming the dough. And we want to go slow because we want to make sure all of the flour is coated and we don't have like any dead spots. So I learned how to make this dish first from my grandfather. And when you learn a recipe from an old Asian person, there's never going to be measurements involved. So I basically had to learn this based on feel. And that's why a lot of noodle dishes have different measurements, because everybody has different preferences based on texture. So I know that sounds kind of intimidating, but I've included my measurements here for you today. And after, once I'm done, I'll do a little guesstimate to see how much water I use so you can follow along. But noodle making is really about feeling the dough and how you like to eat your noodles, and being able to change that according to the room temperature and according to the water temperature. There's a lot of different factors in play here, and I know that sounds intimidating, but really don't be. It's super simple. You just got to make it a few times, and then you really get the hang of the noodle consistency. So if you prefer a bitier noodle, you'd want to use less water, but the downside is the noodles will be harder to pull with less water. So there's really a trade-off right there on how much bite you can give the noodles, but also being able to stretch it enough when you're pulling them. So the art really is to find the perfect balance point between the two, and it just takes repetition and practice, and that's it, and experimentation. You might work up a little bit of a sweat doing this. It's a pretty good arm workout. Okay, and once we get about right here, should be just about ready to go. So it's not too soft, it's not too firm. If you press down on it, it kind of comes back up like a memory foam pillow. Yeah, and I'd say that's the perfect consistency. And like I said, it really comes down to personal preference. Once again, I used about 2 cups of flour and about almost a cup of water, about 3/4 cup. So like my grandpa used to say, the mark of good noodle making is once you're done with the dough, you got cleanish hands. So I think I passed there. Don't ask me why, it's old Chinese wisdom, I wouldn't know. So we'll just flip this right over on top and we'll let it take a 30-minute nap. And while our dough is resting, we can start prepping some of the vegetables and herbs that we'll need for the oil sauce. So first up, we've got some scallions. And I know some people don't like scallions, but I think scallions is absolutely essential for making hand-pulled noodles. Just nice and small, like this. Doesn't have to be anything finer than this. Like I was saying, some people don't really like scallions, but I think it's essential for this dish because it just adds an amazing aroma and taste that you just really can't replicate otherwise. So, give it a try. Some people don't like scallions, like, my family doesn't like scallions, but they still eat it with this dish. So give it a try, you might surprise yourself. And you can set it aside for later. And up next, we've got some cilantro. And this will also add some freshness to your sauce. And just chop it up really nice and fine. Okay, and that should be good. And for the leafy greens, I like to go with Chinese broccoli. And I know bok choy is more traditionally used in these dishes, but I prefer something with a little bit more nutritional value. So these are really tasty and they're super simple to make. So this is my choice of vegetables. So we'll give these a really nice wash, set them aside for later. And lastly, we can prep some fresh garlic. And like the same thing with the other herbs, this is just gonna make the sauce that much better. But do keep in mind this garlic is going to be slightly raw. It'll just gonna have like some hot oil splash over the top of it. So if you don't really like undercooked garlic, you can always substitute with some garlic powder later. So if that's you, then you can omit this step. Man, that's a fat clove of garlic. Prefer my garlic slightly chunkier, but if you like them fine, just chop them a little finer. And that is it. So now all we gotta do is wait for the dough to finish setting. All right, and about 30 minutes later, our dough should be a lot more soft and set. You can see how it's definitely way more malleable. Just set it down and we're gonna start rolling it. Oh, and also don't forget to dust the board generously with flour, because otherwise it's just gonna stick to your rolling pin and that's no fun. And I like to just start rolling it out lengthwise first. Look how easy that's rolling. And once we get there, turn it around and we'll start rolling it this way. And you can see when I'm rolling it, it's like bouncing back a little bit. And that's a really good sign. It means that the noodle's gonna have a lot of bite. Okay, so once it's about, I'd say like a quarter of an inch, something maybe even less, a fifth of an inch, something like that, we can just start dividing it into our strips of noodles. I like to just cut them up into about maybe 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. And this is going to be up to personal preference. If you like thicker noodles, you can cut it. You can cut it thicker. So I'd say somewhere about 1 inch to 1.5 inches is a really good point. So play around with a little bit, see what you prefer, but end of the day, it doesn't matter too much. And this doesn't have to be perfectly straight because we're gonna be pulling these anyways. Yeah, I apologize if my cutting is triggering some of you OCD people. This is not my best or straightest work, so bear with me. Okay, all divided. And now the final step before the fun part is to let it soak up some olive oil. And I prefer olive oil just because it tastes the smoothest. And since we're not frying these anyways, it's not gonna reach like the burning point of olive oil. So you don't have to worry about the oil burning, and olive oil tastes the best. So I'm gonna go with that. And once it's generously coated with oil, we can just cover it up with some plastic wrap. All right, and just let it fully cover. We're gonna let this sit for about 15 to 30 minutes. And since it's pretty warm today, it doesn't need to sit that long. So while this is resting, I'm gonna go boil some water and then we can start the hand pulling and cooking right after this. Now, this is the fun part. I've got the water boiling behind me, so we're ready to hand pull these noodles. And after about 15 minutes, these are very, very easy to pull apart. So what you're gonna do is just to use your fingers and just press them down and just make them a little wider. And then from there, we can just stretch it out like this. Super easy. And since these are, not to toot my own horn, the dough is mixed really well, so you can pull these super, super long. So I'm gonna break them apart in the middle and just drop them straight into the pot. And don't worry about overcooking these because it takes a long time for the noodles to get mushy. So, and by the time we finish hand pulling these, the very last piece of the noodle will be fully cooked before the first piece of noodle ever overcooks. So as soon as you finish pulling it, just drop it straight into the boiling water. And the technique for hand pulling isn't more to slap the noodle against the board. It's more of a light pulling as you kind of stretch it up and down So instead of like slamming it into the board like this, it's more of a gentle pull and an up and down sway. So this way you get the most consistent noodles and they are harder to break apart. And we'll just do that for this entire board. And we'll finish cooking the noodles. This is gonna be great. I'm so excited. I've eaten this my entire life and still every single time I get so excited to eat this. If some of you like hot pot, and if you've been to some of the popular Asian chains like Haidilao, and you order these hand-pulled noodles, sometimes the cooks can come out and they'll like pull this in front of your face and do like a crazy dance. And before I forget, just give these a gentle stir so they don't stick. And I can come back and finish pulling the noodles. Nice and easy. So this cooks super quick. It'll be ready in like 3 or 4 minutes. So by the time we finish pulling them, we can just drop in the fresh vegetables that we washed earlier. And once the veggies are ready, these are basically good to go. So you don't want to overcook these. When they're mushy, it does not taste anywhere near as good. Okay, lower that to a medium. We'll let that simmer for a little bit. And in the meantime, I'm gonna heat up some olive oil over here or a neutral oil. Doesn't really matter, it's up to your preference. I prefer olive oil, and I know some of you don't because you're worried it's gonna burn and whatever, but the only thing I'm gonna drop in here are, oh, it's gonna overflow, sorry, one sec. And if you notice the noodles are gonna overflow, just dump in some cold water and just let it reset. Sorry, back to my point. The reason why I like to use olive oil is the only thing I'm gonna be dropping in there is Sichuan peppercorns, and this is never gonna burn because the burning point of the peppercorns is much lower than olive oil. So, and this is only gonna be on for like a gentle simmer. So the temperature will never get high enough where the oil is gonna burn. So olive oil also tastes much better than canola oil or grapeseed oil. So that's my recommendation, but it's up to you. And then we'll drop in some Sichuan peppercorns and just let it slowly come to a nice simmer. And we'll be splashing that on top of the noodles to make our sauce. Okay, and once the noodles are ready, just strain them and set them aside for later and we can start plating. Okay, and now we're ready to plate. So first, we'll start off with a little bit of soy sauce. Put in about a tablespoon. And next up, the amount of this really varies. This is going to be Chinese Qingqiang black vinegar. I like my noodles with a little bit of acidity, so I put in about like 1 or 2 teaspoons, but this is really going to be up to you and your personal preference. And next up is going to be the noodles that we worked so hard on. Plate it to your stomach's desires. Add some of the vegetables. After that, sprinkle on some MSG, as well as about a teaspoon of table salt. And then we can put the herbs that we prepped earlier. We have our chopped garlic, our fresh cilantro, as well as the most important scallions. And lastly, we're gonna finish up with some Sichuan chili pepper. The amount's gonna vary based on how spicy you like your food, but I love spicy food, so this is probably gonna be too spicy for most of you, but I'm probably putting on like a heaping tablespoon plus. So use your own judgment, experiment, and see what you like. And last, but certainly not least, spoon some of that infused oil over the top. And you'll hear that nice crackle. And we'll do about 2 tablespoons so all of the chili can fully cook. And that is it. Super easy, right? After just about an hour of work, and honestly, it was less because I spent like 40 minutes just sitting around waiting for the dough to set. So it was really about 20 minutes total of labor, and this is the result. So let's give it a good mix and see how it tastes. This is totally biased, but these are the best noodles on the planet. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me get out more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.